And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment from very high above all puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the not-so-silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you on the road in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Thursday. Well, it turns out that I have created a little bit, I've really got under somebody's skin, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And every day that I wake up and I find out that, yes, indeed, I've struck a nerve with somebody. I mean, it's just like starting the day with a fresh cup of coffee that you don't get that really good cup of coffee. I mean, it's like the 1 in 10 pots. And well, I'm telling you, my friends, this morning is a beauty. I'm going to tell you why here in just a little bit. So let me tell you where I'm at. I'm visiting. I've got a couple of things to do in Jackson Hole. So we brought the Cowboy State Politics live on the road, and we'll be here for obviously today's program and tomorrow's program as well. And then on Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday, whatever, we'll be back in the Cowboy State Politics studio back home in Sheridan for today and tomorrow here in beautiful Jackson Hole. And you can see behind me that it's kind of rainy and overcast here, so you can't really see the Tetons. But anyway, in Jackson, and we've got a lot to talk about today. And I think probably the place to start would be yesterday's podcast. And if you haven't listened to it yet, you need to go back and check it out. So on the Cowboy Cow Pie morning show with Jake Nichols last Thursday, so a week ago today, there was a segment that they did about the Freedom Caucus, and in it, Gail Simmons, founder of the Frontier Republican, said some really reprehensible things about Secretary of State Chuck Gray. She was talking about a hot mic moment that happened back in 2021 I'm pretty sure it was during the special session, in which Steve Harshman was on Zoom in his office in a school. And he said some really, really nasty things about our Secretary of State. And during that cow pie segment yesterday or last Thursday, Gail Simmons said that what he said was not inaccurate. And I wanted to start off just by playing you a brief soundbite of yesterday's podcast, so you have a full understanding of what I'm talking about, and then you can go back and listen to the whole thing. So here's that soundbite from yesterday on the podcast. This one, above all, absolutely takes the cake. So first, let me play for you what she said, and then I'm going to play for you what she really meant.
Former Speaker of the House, when I forget people's names.
Yeah.
Anyway, they are clearly great colleagues, good friends. And there was a dust up again because of a moment. Steve Harshman.
Yeah.
Where a comment was made, which, by the way, was not inaccurate. He was talking about the current Secretary of State.
Remember what she said. It was not inaccurate.
Comment was made, which, by the way, was not inaccurate.
Let's just pause right there for just a second. And I realize that we're kind of in the middle of things, but let's get a word in from our sponsors before we continue. Before the break, I had played for you what Gail Simmons said about some little innocuous comment that was made on the floor of the House. Just so we're clear about what Gail Simmons said, here it is again.
Comment was made, which, by the way, was not inaccurate. He was talking about the current Secretary of State.
Now, if you didn't know what Steve Harshman said, and if you weren't there, like I and Gail Simmons was, and you have no idea how incredibly reprehensible what she just said is. Here's what Gail Simmons was referring to. And before I hit play on this, this is the part of the episode that if you're listening to it at work, you should plug in your headphones. Or if you have little children around, chase them out of the room because they don't need to hear this. Now, when you hear it, I've bleeped out some of the more really offensive things that Steve Harshman says, but you can clearly hear what he's saying. Here it is.
I just think is really difficult and kind of murkies the bill, even if intent is good.
We've got somebody online needs to turn off their. Thank you.
What he said was Chuck Gray, F, and then a homosexual slur. And then he said little effing and then the same homosexual slur.
It was made, which, by the way, was not inaccurate.
Cowboy State Daily, Gail Simmons, and Jake Nichols owe Wyoming Secretary of State Chuck Gray a formal apology. Not that I think they'll ever get one. So that was yesterday on the podcast, and I'm telling you, my friends, if you look at the comments on that episode, and if you feel so inclined to look at Gail Simmons' page, you can see all of her attempts at doing the Olympic backpedal. Apparently, I'm an obscure third-rate podcaster, and that she lives rent-free in my head. It's not entirely true, my friends. I believe in the truth, and I believe calling out the bullcrap when it's appropriate. The Cowboy State Daily, the Cow Pie, they are the largest news outlet in Wyoming, and they've said some really reprehensible things about the Secretary of State, and they have to be held accountable. And right now, they're not. The only outlet that's holding those people accountable is this one. So if you want to hear the whole thing, and by the way, that whole segment with Jake in the cow pie, which by the way, ask yourself, who lives in a cow pie? And it's probably the people that were running that show. But anyway, the whole thing was a Freedom Caucus bashing session. And it doesn't really matter to me if if you like the Freedom Caucus, if you sympathize with them, if you like their policies, that doesn't really, or if you don't. I mean, if you think that they're a terrible group of people, which they're not, I know all of them, and they're a group of people that they're just interested in your freedom. They're interested in doing the best thing for this state. And, you have to admit that this state has been run by a bunch of liberals for the last 50 years. And so the first time that conservatives are actually in power, it's a pretty big shock to the system. The truth is, my friends, that this state taxes you too much. It spends too much. And if we don't pay attention to what we're doing, and I've talked to several members of the Appropriations Committee that have told me in 3 or 4 or 5 years, if we don't change what we're doing, we are going to be operating in the red. That is spending more money than we're actually bringing in, which is a shocking. I mean, the last biennial budget was $11.5 billion. $11.5 billion for a state that has 568,000 people. I mean, I haven't done the math on that, but I'm guessing that that's a crap load for every man, woman, and child that lives in this state. And if we don't change that and change it soon, we are going to be operating in a deficit. And if getting our finances right and making sure that the government isn't taxing the bejesus out of you. If you think that that's a good thing, then maybe you ought to stop listening to Gail Simmons and Jake Nichols and the Cow Pie for that matter, and just do your own research. Because the truth is, my friends, that the Cow Pie and it's not just them; it's the entirety of the Wyoming media. They're just lying to you about a great many things, and it's a narrative that's meant to help the liberal redcoats maintain power. Yeah, and that's all that it is. Those people will spend every single dollar that is not nailed down. I can't tell you how many times I've been sitting in the gallery in the House of Representatives, and they've announced, "Hey, we have $3, $4, $5 billion to spend." Now, you would think that the way things work in your household and my household is you don't spend every red cent that you see laying around. But these redcoats in Cheyenne, most of the time, they will make sure that they spend every single dollar that is available. And the truth is, my friends, if there is excess money in tax revenues, it means you're taxing too much. I mean, if you got more money left over than is absolutely necessary to cover the necessary functions of government, then you're taxing people too much. And you just really need to lay off. But you're never going to get the redcoats to agree to that. And the media, well, they're pretty much in bed with all the liberals. So that's why in the cow pie you get a whole bunch of crap. I know. I mean, that's what they are. So that's where we're going to begin this morning. In the cow pie, an article entitled "Now a Candidate for Governor, 50-Year-Old Rule Says That Eric Barlow Can't Chair a Committee." And before I get into the piece, I just want to explain some weird little eccentricity about why the Wyoming legislature. You would think that if you have one position and that you're going to run for another position, that you would have to resign the first one. Not in Wyoming, my friends. That's not how it works. If you are a senator which has a 4-year term and you're in the middle, well, you don't have to resign your position to run for, say, governor or secretary of state or any of those. If you lose the race, then you can just go back to your old job. And the perfect example of that is Senator Slithers, Tara Nethercott. In the middle of her term, she ran for secretary of state. And then she lost that race to Chuck Gray. Thank God we all dodged a bullet on that one. But she lost the race, and then she was able to go back to being a senator. Now, that's not the case with Eric Barlow. Eric Barlow is this is the end of his term. So if he were not running for governor, he'd have to go. I mean, he would have to run for his Senate seat again. But here's what the cow pie says, and I quote. Now that State Senator Eric Barlow has announced that he's running for governor, he's stepped down as chairman of a state legislative committee, and that's Health and Labor, which that in and of itself, my friends, is absolutely unconscionable. There's yet another podcast that I did about Eric Barlow's voting record, and the truth is that when Eric Barlow is not in power, when he is not a chairman, and when he was not the Speaker of the House, he actually voted for some pro-life bills. Not all of them. Some. In fact, the very first piece of pro-life legislation that Eric Barlow got to vote on was the heartbeat bill. And you guessed it, he voted against it. But by and large, and I don't even know how you can be kind of pro-life. I guess that's like being kind of pregnant. You can't be kind of pregnant, no pun intended, my friends, but you either are or you aren't. Well, when Eric Barlow was the chairman, or when he was the Speaker of the House, he stuffed every single pro-life bill he could think of, and that would not get that much attention into his drawer, and it never saw the light of day. And so the long and the short of this is that when Eric Barlow's name was going to show up as voting yay or nay on a pro-life bill, he voted for it. But when he could hide his vote from Wyoming citizens, that's when he stuffed it in the drawer. And so for him to be the chairman of Health and Labor, which is the committee that all pro-life bills usually go to, it's absolutely unconscionable. Bo Beitman cannot, I mean, I cannot believe, I can, because it wasn't Bo Beitman that assigned the committees. It was probably Eric Barlow himself. But I mean, that's a story for another matter. Well, anyway, Eric Barlow has to step down from Health and Labor. And quoting from the cow pie, that's because of a Wyoming Legislative Management Council rule dating back to 1975, which says that any committee chair running for statewide office shall immediately resign from his or her chairmanship of the committee. The rule does not apply to other leadership roles like Senate President or House Speaker. Senator Eric Barlow of Gillette, announced his candidacy in amongst a whole bunch of lies that he told. I'm a conservative. I'm pro-life. I'm going to protect your guns, all of which is complete bullcrap. But he also chaired the House of Representatives version of that committee from 2017 to 2018 during his 2013 to 2022 tenure as a state representative, which culminated in his serving as one of the most liberal House speakers in Wyoming history. The truth is that Eric Barlow votes with the Democrats over 80% of the time. It's actually 81.88 if you average the last 10 years, the last decade of his voting record. And the only reason that percentage is that low is there were some years where he only voted 75% of the time with the Democrats. Truth is, my friends, if you are 75 or 80% of a thing, it kind of means that you're that thing. And in this case, it means that Eric Barlow is a straight up Democrat. And the only reason he's a Republican is it's a lot easier to get elected in Wyoming if you're not a Democrat. So, anyway, Eric Barlow, thankfully, has stepped down as chairman of House and Labor or Health and Labor. But the problem is that another redcoat, weird. Why is it that Senator Bo Biteman, an allegedly conservative fella, is nominating people who are extraordinarily liberal to committees that are very, very important? Maybe it's because, he's not exactly all that conservative. And if you look at the recent legislative ratings, it's pretty obvious, and they all pretty much agree that Senator Bo Biteman, Dennis is his real name, Dennis Biteman, really isn't a conservative anymore. And I mean, I'm really disappointed in him. He's my senator. But I guess, it kind of fits with my track record. My representative was Poisonberry Craigo, unfortunately. And then, I moved to Sheridan thinking that, hey, man, maybe I'll have a conservative senator for once. Right. And then Bo Biteman showed up. So, I mean, it's just despicable. And I mean, it's my luck. I mean, it's crazy. Moving on. Now, and I've got a couple of stories that are all about this stupid idea that people can be trans, that somehow if you're a man, you can think that you're a woman and that makes you a woman, or that you're a woman and you can become a man. I mean, it's absolute lunacy. But there's a story, and I'm going to get to it here in just a second. But a Wyoming federal judge has dismissed the lawsuit against I think this sorority was Kappa Kappa Gamma, because they allowed Artemis Langford to be a member. Which, by the way, his real name is not Artemis. His real name is Dallin James Langford. Now, I don't know if he's legally changed it since then, but I mean, his real name was Dallin James. But before we get there, there's a piece in the Daily Wire that I think sets this up perfectly because it shows you the lunacy, the left wing craziness that this federal judge is operating on. But this is from the Daily Wire. Quote, please contact our office. Democratic lawmaker tells kids that she'll help them undergo gender procedures. And I quote, in a TikTok video on Monday, a Michigan Democratic legislator offered to help children access gender affirming care if they just contacted her office. Michigan State Representative Carrie Rangens said in a video that she was specifically talking to trans kids here in Michigan, adding that life altering gender procedures are still legal in the state. And wearing a Protect Trans Kids t shirt, a sweatshirt rather, the Michigan Democrat posted the video Monday in response to the University of Michigan's hospital network entered gender procedures for minors under pressure from the Department of Justice. Now, I've got a piece of that video. So let me just pull that up and I'll play it for you. And I understand when I do this, it kind of gives you the willies. And this one is no different, but check this out. Let's see here. Oh, wait, no, I did not do that. So anyway, I guess I don't have that video. See, that's what I get for not having a producer, man. Agent 29, you really need to get on get off the gallivanting around, get back to work, and um, get back to being my producer. Well, anyway, sorry I don't have that video. But the point is that this representative says that she's going to help trans kids. Let me just quote what she says. Quote, I want you to know, as trans kids here in Michigan, that this care is obviously safe and effective. And that's why it's been approved and why it's been used all across the country and continues to be used, she added. So if you need to find a new place to get care, it's still legal here in Michigan. So reach out to our office and we'll be able to connect you to what might still be available in our community. Rangens, who represents Ann Arbor, Michigan, urged children to, quote, please contact our office and provided contact information. We love you. We are really supportive of you as kids, and we want to make sure that you can grow up and thrive here in Michigan. The truth is, my friends, that these so-called gender affirming procedures are nothing of the sort. They're 100% of them fail. because it is impossible for a man to become a woman any more than it is a woman to be able to become a trout over a giraffe. And I'm not trying to be offensive here, but that's how ridiculous it is. I mean, just absolutely atrocious, my friends. And I used to say, thank God we live in Wyoming because we don't have to put up with all this stuff. But I don't necessarily think that that's entirely true. And well, anyway, you know what? Let's go ahead and take a break, and I'm going to see if I can tee up that video for you. So we'll take a break, and when we come back, I should be able to have that video for you. So we'll do that after the break. And but my friends, there's more lunacy coming. Wait until I tell you what that Wyoming judge said when he dismissed that lawsuit. Apparently, we can't define what a woman is because we're not biologists. We'll do that in just a second.
Ever since gold backing was removed from the dollar, the value has dropped significantly over the past few decades. Experts say this is one of the main reasons goods are more expensive and your savings are worth less each year. How would you know how many dollars to save for retirement if the valuation of the dollar changes over time? Would you work all week for that $20 gold piece? Let's look at the valuation of this coin from the 1970s to today. When President Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971, this coin traded for about $275. Today, it trades for about $14,000. Buying and holding rare coins using only a fraction of your portfolio is our suggested way to save for the future. Call U.S. Coin Capital at 1-800-878-2646 to get your free United States Gold and Silver Buyer's Guide.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Welcome to Lessons in Civility by Morton Buildings. Gentlemen, is your garage completely jam-packed full of all of your unnecessary crap? And your lovely wife has been on your tail, nagging you nonstop to clean it out? It's not because she just wants to incessantly irritate you. Chivalry dictates that you should clear out a space so she can park her car inside and you don't end up sleeping on the couch anymore. Do that. Contact Nick and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Not only are they the experts in metal building construction, they're also skilled at keeping you out of the doghouse. One more time, their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out at their website, mortonbuildings.com. This has been Lessons in Civility from Morton Buildings. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live on the road in Jackson. You can watch Cowboy State Politics Live on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Rumble. And certainly, definitely, you don't want to miss the Cowboy State Politics podcast. Yesterday's, my friends, was a doozy. If you missed it, go back and watch that thing where I hold the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show, Cow Pie Morning Show, Jake Nichols and Gail Simmons accountable for their outrageous behavior. And it's honestly, Secretary of State Chuck Gray, deserves a formal apology. Not that I think that he'll ever get one. Well, my friends, today is August 28th, the 62nd anniversary of Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech, which he delivered on the National Mall. And it's every time I hear this speech, my friends, it absolutely gives me shivers. And I've got a quick video for you here. Let's just go ahead and listen to it. It's just a little quick snippet of his speech. We'll listen to it, and then we'll be back with that little really, really terrible video that I promised you. But here's Martin Luther King Jr.'s, at least part of it, I Have a Dream speech.
So even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my four little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
62 years ago, Martin Luther King Jr. delivered that speech on the National Mall. And if you ever get a chance to go to Washington, D.C., I mean, there's a lot of places that you need to go look at. One of them is the Lincoln Memorial on the National Mall. The first and only time I was there, that is the number one place that I wanted to go to. Very first on the list. And walking in the Lincoln Memorial is, I thought that it was an incredible experience. And while I was there, I wish I had a recording of this. When I was in Washington, D.C., I wasn't doing the podcast. Cowboy state politics hadn't even started yet. And we walk in, and there's a lot of people. And out of the blue, a woman starts singing the national anthem. And the acoustics in that place are so good that her voice just echoed off of all four walls, and it just gave me shivers. I mean, it was absolutely incredible. And if you ever get a chance to go there, definitely go to the Lincoln Memorial. I really hope that you'll have the same feeling that I did when I was there. So during the break, I did pull that video of. And I mean, this is terrible, but it's a Michigan representative saying that she's going to help trans kids with their gender transition as if they were actually a thing. But go ahead and watch this. I don't know how much of this we're going to be able to play. I may barf before we get to the
Hey,
end of it, but here
State
it is.
Rep Carrie Ranyans here, and I am recording a video today to talk to you, trans kids here in Michigan. I want you to know that the care you might want for gender affirming care is legal in Michigan, and it's still
This is horrible.
continuing in a wide variety
Absolutely
of
horrible.
places. You may have heard that the University of Michigan is going to stop doing some of the safe and effective care. They're choosing to do that.
Okay.
The
All right.
grown-ups
All right. I can't. No, stop. I can't take it anymore. This is an elected representative to their state legislature, and she's lying to her constituents, and she knows that it's a lie. This gender transition crap, I mean, that's exactly what it is. Uh, a man cannot become a woman any more than a woman can become a rhinoceros, even though there are a lot of, I can't say that. I almost said there, although there's a lot of women in our legislature that have become rhinos. There's a state Senate president that's become a rhino. So maybe that type of transition works, but certainly not when women try to become men or the reverse. My friends, we've got to get back to reality. We're living in a time where um, there are people that know better that are just lying to you. And let me give you a great example of one. A federal judge in Wyoming, and this is the thing here. I used to think that, well, we're in Wyoming, and that stuff doesn't happen here. Oh, we're conservative. We would never have radical judges that make rulings that make absolutely no sense. But I and you and everybody else are definitely mistaken. From the cow pie, in an article entitled Federal Judge Confused by Trump's Definition of Woman Dismisses Lawsuit Filed After Man Joins Wyoming Sorority. Now, we've heard this story for a long time. This case has been appealed a couple of different times, as it rightfully should, in that we have a federal judge in Wyoming. And just wait until I read you what his reasoning is. But here, from the piece, and I quote: sororities may define the word woman beyond just individuals born with a certain set of reproductive organs, a judge says. A federal judge has dismissed a lawsuit filed by former members of Kappa Kappa Gamma chapter at the University of Wyoming after the group admitted a male member, Artemis Langford, in 2022. And again, his real name is not Artemis. It's Dallin James Langford. Anyway, on Friday, Judge Alan Johnson of the District of Wyoming dismissed the lawsuit with prejudice, claiming that the three plaintiffs, Hannah Holtmeyer, Allison Kogan, and Haley Rutsch, failed in their amended complaint to convince the court to interfere with Kappa's contractually valid interpretation of its own bylaws. Now, this is fascinating because there is a Supreme Court ruling in the state of Wyoming that allows the court to get involved in the Wyoming Republican Party, a private organization, which, according to this ruling, and this might be the one little bright spot in this, that a federal judge has said that the state cannot get involved, or the court can't get involved in private organization. I guess if you're the Republican Party in Wyoming, that opinion doesn't matter. It only matters if you're going to allow trans kids into your organization, against the wishes of your members, who allegedly are the only ones that fit the definition of the whole reason behind your sorority. This thing is so confusing, my friends, that it's hard to put your finger on. But here's what the judge says: "Quote, nothing in the bylaws or the standing rules requires Kappa to narrowly define the words women or woman to include only those individuals born with a certain set of reproductive organs, particularly when even the dictionary cited by the plaintiffs offers a more expansive definition. We are required to leave Kappa alone." Though the plaintiffs noted that President Donald Trump provided a national standard for the terms in an executive order earlier this year, stating that women shall mean adult human females, and female means a person belonging at conception to the sex that produces the large reproductive cell. Johnson, perhaps paraphrasing Ketanji Brown Jackson, expressed confusion about Trump's clear-cut definitions. Quote, "We're not entirely sure." And this is what the judge said. Okay, so you are a guy who's been confirmed by the Senate, and you're put on the bench by a president, and this is the reasoning. Listen to this crap. Quote, "We are not entirely sure what this definition means, not having a degree in biology." Oh my God, my friends. Every single person that is walking the face of the earth was born from a woman. There is no exception, my friends. Fish do not have human children, nor do giraffes or rhinoceroses or hippos or anything else. Only a woman, a human female, can give birth to a human being. Now, I don't understand why it's so difficult for the court and for these radicals, and that's just what it is. I mean, they're pushing a radical agenda that has not based in fact, and the whole genesis of their argument is to convince you of things that are just not true. Here's why. If you can be convinced that a man can become a woman, that one of the most fundamental truths that every single person on the face of the earth understands, that is, they have a mommy and a daddy, that is what was required to make them. If you can be convinced that that is no longer true, then you can be convinced of anything. You can be convinced that we should tax the bejesus out of anybody, or that Marxism is good, or that maybe a totalitarian regime under the Democrats is what we really ought to have. And if that sounds ridiculous, I am not wrong with this, my friends, that it is an attack on the essential truth that we all know. That's what it is. And now that we have federal judges, now here's another interesting point. Not only do we have another Wyoming Supreme Court ruling that says that the court can get involved, or that the court can get involved in private organizations like the Republican Party, but we also have the "What is a Woman" Act that was passed by this past legislature, that clearly defines what a man and what a woman is. So apparently, this federal judge can't look at Wyoming law, and has to make up his own definition. Let's see here. And this is from the Blaze, by the way. This is the Wyoming paper put this out. Anyway, he says, in any case, he said, those definitions are limited to the executive branch and its, quote, interpretation of federal laws and administration policy, and have no bearing in the world of private contracts, except, of course, if you're the Republican Party, such as those between the official organization based out of Ohio and its membership. In short, we are required to leave Kappa alone. Now, Johnson is also the judge that dismissed a previous complaint by the same members of the Kappa Kappa Gamma sorority at UW on similar grounds, claiming that the Kappa organization had not defined what a woman is in its bylaws, and therefore neither would he. The court will not define a woman today, he wrote in August 2023. So Alan Johnson is a radical Democrat judge that needs to be removed from the bench. However that works. I mean, if you're not willing to actually look at biologic fact that he himself knows, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that Alan Johnson is the result of a female human giving birth to him. I mean, I might be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that that's the case. How is it that we can be sure of anything? And it's just another example of federal judges that are, that are just doing whatever they want to do, regardless of what reality is, or and again, my friends, this thing is so frustrating, because we all know what the truth is, and there are people in positions of power that they refuse to admit it. And it happens in Wyoming. Alan Johnson is from Wyoming. And if you would have listened to some of the argumentation on the floor of the House and the Senate in this last legislative session when they were debating the What is a Woman Act, you would understand how big of a problem we have in Wyoming. That there are people in positions of power, elected office, that refuse to look at the truth, and they refuse to speak it because it goes against their radical agenda. And I mean, that's what it is, really. I mean, there's no difference of it. Let's move to some national news. And this one I found kind of interesting. Months after probing the Clinton server scandal, James Comey's FBI had its own little email issues, some memos say, according to justthenews.com. And I quote, months after he refused to charge Hillary Clinton during the 2016 election for using a private unauthorized server to transmit classified information, then FBI Director James Comey's inner circle used private email accounts to further a plan to make an quote unauthorized disclosure to journalists, to leak to journalists is what they're talking about. But they called them an unauthorized disclosure, which, I mean, if it's unauthorized, doesn't that mean that you're kind of breaking the law anyway? I pay no attention to that. When investigators in a criminal probe codenamed Tropic Vortex sought permission in 2019 to gain access to those private emails, federal prosecutors turned them down, according to the memos recently uncovered by the current FBI Director Kash Patel and declassified for release to Congress by Attorney General Pam Bondi. The U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington, D.C. issued a prosecutorial declination decision for Tropic Vortex, the FBI memo said, shutting down the probe. These memos are the latest evidence that FBI agents on the front lines had serious concerns about illegal leaks and abuses of classified information, allegedly involving major figures in Washington, like James Comey, now Senator Adam Schiff, and Hillary Clinton, and probably Bill Clinton if he wasn't too busy with, well, you know what I'm getting at. The efforts at investigating them were repeatedly thwarted. Now, just to kind of refresh your memory here, here's James Comey when he dismissed the prosecution of Hillary Clinton. Just a little memory refresher for you.
Our judgment is that no reasonable prosecutor would bring such a case. Prosecutors necessarily weigh a number of factors before deciding whether to bring charges. There are obvious considerations like the strength of the evidence, especially regarding intent. Responsible decisions also consider the context of a person's actions and how similar situations have been handled in the past. In looking back at our investigations into the mishandling or removal of classified information, we cannot find a case that would support bringing criminal charges on these facts.
Oh, so just because somebody a person is the first one to break a law means that we shouldn't prosecute them. Right? There's no other examples of anybody else getting prosecuted for this. So we're just not even going to pay any attention, and no reasonable prosecutor would press charges on this. Except, of course, that there was that little problem at Mar-a-Lago where Donald Trump was accused of illegally having classified information. The truth is that and here's the difference, right? Donald Trump was a president of the United States, and only the president can declassify information. He doesn't even have to say it. The president can declassify anything he wants whenever he wants, and he doesn't even have to write it down. There doesn't have to be any announcement whatsoever. And so every single piece of paper that Donald Trump had at Mar-a-Lago, he was absolutely entitled to have because he was the president of the United States. He could declassify anything that he wants. There is a double standard in our country, my friends, that if you are a conservative, well, then the rules absolutely apply to you, and you will be prosecuted to the nth degree of the law. But if you are a liberal, that means that we can just ignore whatever prosecutions are warranted. We don't even have to pay any attention. It's rules for thee, but not for me, my friends. And I mean, if you want to know why we have a crime problem in this country, it's for that very reason that Democrats, acting on their own political ideologies and their own agenda, refuse to prosecute criminals. And that's what Hillary Clinton is. When you break the law, you are by definition a criminal. Back to the Just the News piece for just a second here. Federal prosecutors originally issued a preservation order for the private email account based on the findings by the FBI's Washington field office that the communications were in furtherance of the media leak. Ultimately, though, the prosecutors decided against pursuing an additional legal process because the communication was itself not classified. So basically, what they're saying, my friends, is even though there was classified information that was transmitted to a reporter, and I believe it was at the New York Times, no, the Time magazine, that the transmission, and that is the act or the sending of the email, was not itself classified. So they're not talking about the information that was transmitted or the documents that were sent. Those are classified, but the actual action of sending an email wasn't classified, and that's why they didn't prosecute. Do you understand how ridiculous all of this is? That if you're a Democrat, they will twist themselves into a 27 turn pretzel just to make sure that you avoid prosecution. I mean, it is absolutely unconscionable, my friends. But I mean, they're not the only ones. Now, if you listen to what the Democrats say, and by the way, they still haven't figured out why it is that they lost the 2024 election. It could be because they completely have no idea where the American citizens are, where the electorate is. Take, for example, this one from the Daily Wire. Failed vice presidential candidate Tampon Tim Walz crashes Republicans, takes deplorables to new lows in an unhinged rant. And I quote, Governor Tim Walz took a page out of former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's failed 2016 playbook on Monday, taking her basket of deplorables comment to new lows as he trashed Republican voters at the Democrat Party's summer meeting. Walz began by attacking President Donald Trump's efforts to root out diversity, equity, and inclusion policies and claiming that the Democrat Party should lean in and protect them. The failed vice presidential candidate who deployed his own state's National Guard to enforce draconian COVID-era restrictions. Tim Walz was the guy that was arresting people for, just being out in public during COVID. You had to stay in your house, according to him. He went on to complain about Trump using the National Guard to assist local law enforcement in cracking down on crime. Walls pivoted to attack the press, complaining that there was no basis for media claims that there was a division in the Democratic Party. There's no division in my darn house. Of course, he didn't use the word darn. And we're still married, and things are good. That's life. Here is Tampon Tim Walls saying it. Listen to this, man. There's no wonder why this guy didn't get elected. Check it out.
Proud to be a diverse party. We are proud of the diversity to be a diverse party. We are proud
That wasn't
of
Mike
the
Glitch, by the
diversity
way.
of this country. We're not shying away from diversity as a strength and equity as a goal and inclusion being the air we breathe. That's what we should be doing. But what we have to be clear about is don't take the bait. It boggles my damn mind that in the midst of a military takeover our cities and the attempt to go into others, the flaunting of the rule of law, the cruelness and the unconstitutional nature of the way they're attacking our neighbors, that the press finds the need to talk about, oh, there's a division in the Democratic Party. There's a division in my damn house and we're still married and things are good. That's life. That's life. We are strong. We are strong because we challenge each other. We are strong because we're held accountable. We're strong because we believe that there's a place for everyone here. Think of how easy it would be to be a damn Republican. Oh, what should I wear today? This stupid freaking red hat. What should I say today? I don't know. Just make sure it's cruel. Who do we listen to? That guy.
Yeah, that always
The
gets
felon in
all
the
right.
White
I
House?
can't
Yeah,
take
listen
I
to him
can't
and
take
that
this
will be
anymore.
fine. Now he's talking about burning.
All right. So it's obviously the Democrat Party's playbook that the way that they should get votes is by insulting you, the American voter. And this is a tactic that the Democrat Party shifted to a while ago. That somehow, if you just swear enough, people will, the voters will look at you favorably. That's how you reach normal, everyday American citizens. That you insult the other party, that you call them stupid, that you do everything that you can to insult them, and somehow that's going to bring people to your side. It's obviously not working for the Democrats, which is why they got pummeled in the last election. And rightfully so, my friends. There's no reason whatsoever that anyone should have voted for them, and they didn't. I mean, okay, so there was a lot of people. I mean, the election was a landslide. And if you want to take a parallel out of Wyoming, there's a reason why voters are electing more conservatives to our state legislature, and why when it is revealed that they've elected a redcoat, then those guys are quickly shown the door, because American and Wyoming citizens are tired of the liberal bullcrap. We had to live under Joe Biden for 4 years, and thank God Donald Trump got elected, because I'm pretty sure that there wouldn't have been a country had he not. But I mean, the point is, my friends, that American citizens, Wyoming citizens, are tired of the liberal bullcrap. And that's why they're electing conservative. That's why Donald Trump got elected. That's why the House of Representatives in Wyoming is now under the control of conservatives. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out why these things happen in politics. The truth is, Democrats and liberals, they don't understand voters, and that's why they're getting kicked out of office. We'll finish up the program in just a second. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and good looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live. Program you're listening to right now is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program. Welcome back to the program. Cowboy State Politics Live on a Thursday. I'm your host, David Iverson, doing what I was born to do with talent given to me by God Himself. Sorry about your luck, Gail Simmons. This program is not some obscure third-rate podcast. We actually have an audience, and thank you very much for listening. I can't tell you how much it means to me that you listen to the program and watch the program when you do. I mean, let's be honest, there'd be no reason for me to do what I'm doing without you. So thank you very much for your support. Thank you for listening. And thank you for paying attention to the program. Well, we've got about 10 minutes left in the show. And there's a couple of pieces that I wanted to talk to you about. And this whole program, we've been talking about the idiocy of the American left. And make no mistake, I mean, the same morons exist in Wyoming. It's just, they're a little bit better at hiding their redcoats. But there's a piece from the Washington Free Beacon entitled "The DNC Passed a Resolution Calling for, quote, unrestricted aid to Gaza and a two-state solution." The party's chairman pulled it after anti-Israel Democrats, listen to this, claimed that it didn't go far enough. Now, before I get into this, what does it mean to have a two-state solution? Well, a two-state solution means the end of Israel. It is a farce that you can have a country of Israel and a country of Gaza or Palestine or whatever you want to call it. By the way, Palestine has never been a country in the history of the world. They're not a country, and they never have been. And I don't really care about what some alleged conservatives say about this. Now, have you noticed that there is a dramatic increase in the amount of anti-Semitism online? And a lot of it is coming from people who are allegedly part of our own party. They've bought into the liberal narrative that this war was started by Israeli oppression, that it's them committing genocide. Now, let me just address that just for a little bit. Um, it is not genocide. It's called a war. On October 7th, the Palestinians in Gaza fired over 1,000 missiles into Israel. Now, what would happen if, say, Mexico or Canada fired 1,200 rockets into the United States? We'd be at war, my friends. Of course, it wouldn't last very long, and we'd be able to take care of it pretty quickly. But it would be an act of war. And that's exactly what it was. Now, you just heard me say that Palestine isn't a country. But in 1985, at the United Nations, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO, which was Hamas before it was Hamas, they declared their independence. They declared at the United Nations they were an independent country. Keep in mind, they were fully dependent upon Israel for their very existence, food, water, all sorts of other aid. But they declared their independence, and then they committed an act of war against Israel. Now, Gaza isn't any bigger than Washington, D.C. It's about 60 square miles. And if you do the math, the amount of rockets that were fired versus how many square miles and acres Gaza is, it means that at least 2 rockets were fired from every acre in Gaza. So an acre is 43,560 square feet, which is not that much. You can stand in the middle of an acre and you can see either side of it. It's a really small area. Now you can't tell me if somebody is living on that acre of land that they didn't know that a giant rocket was fired from it. It's not possible, my friends. Secondarily, before Israel attacked Gaza, they made numerous efforts to notify civilians that an attack was imminent. Text messages, emails, phone calls, leaflets that were dropped from the air. Israel made every attempt to notify civilians that an attack was coming. Now, again, Israel is about the only country that I'm aware of, at least since the conclusion of World War II, that actually did that. Now, the United States dropped leaflets on Hiroshima and Nagasaki before we dropped the bombs on them. And that's why I say since the conclusion of World War II. But I don't know of another country that has notified civilians before they attack. That they've notified the enemy, the very people that just launched an act of war against them. Israel notified them that this was coming. And so if you are a civilian and you're told, get the heck out, an attack is coming, and you're told multiple times and you stay there, um, kind of means that you're sort of complicit with it. This is war, my friends. This is not sticks or tiddlywinks or anything else. It is war, and the war has not been concluded, no matter what the liberal media wants you to believe. And so anything you see online that it's genocide or that it's the evil Israelis that are persecuting the Palestinians, first, you have no idea what you're talking about. Second, you're paying attention to off the wall Looney Tune conspiracy theories, some of which are being propagated by some very prominent Republicans, and it's just not the truth, my friends. So, from the Washington Free Beacon, the Democrats pulled the resolution, and I quote. The Democrat National Committee meeting on Tuesday devolved into an anti Israel slugfest, leading its chairman, Ken Martin, to pull a resolution many party members believed was not harsh enough on the Jewish state. Instead, Martin invited the anti Israel members to join a committee to reevaluate the party's position on Israel. The Martin backed resolution, which the DNC initially approved, called for, quote, unrestricted aid to Gaza and a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And as I already told you, a two-state solution means the end of Israel. Language that moderate Democrats have long used. An alternative resolution championed by the party's anti-Israel West Wing, left wing, if there's a further left wing than the Democrats, anyway, went significantly farther, calling for a full-scale arms embargo on Israel, the suspension of American military aid, and the recognition of Palestine as a country. That's a direct quote. DNC members initially adopted the more moderate version in an uncounted voice vote, but Martin ultimately pulled both from consideration after the party's anti Israel members revolted. Dave Weigel, who works for Semaphore, and he's a reporter, captured Martin during a private discussion, quote, with the alternative Gaza resolution sponsors before he canceled the vote. Quote, there's a divide in our party on this issue. Politico quoted Martin as having said, this is a moment that calls for shared dialogue, calls for advocacy. After abandoning his own moderate proposal, Martin pledged to assemble a DNC committee comprised of stakeholders on all sides that will continue to have conversation to work through this and bring solutions back to our party. Right. That's just another example of the radical Democrats being who they are. And it's there's no question about it, my friends. And the truth is that the Democrat Party is made up of a large number of straight up anti-Semites. And I don't see any reason why we should pull any punches on this. I mean, if you're the guy that's going to deny that Israel has a right to exist, which is what you're doing when you call for a two-state solution, when you utter phrases like from the river to the sea, which literally means the destruction of Israel, you are by definition an anti-Semite. And I don't know if you've seen it or not, but there are some alleged conservative people, formerly very conservative people in Wyoming, that are using their social media accounts to spread anti-Semitism. One of them is a former state senator. I don't know any reason why you would listen to him, which is why I try to avoid everything that he posts. But he's been posting a lot of really anti-Semitic stuff, and it's completely unconscionable. And if you're one of the people that sympathizes with that, you really need to assess where you're at. You need to do some reading, and you need to really reevaluate your positions. Well, my friends, we burned up another busy broadcast hour on the program. We're on the road from Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And I'll be back tomorrow to do another hour program. Unfortunately, it won't be open line Friday because I'm on the road and I don't really possess the necessary equipment to do open line Friday. I apologize for that. But we will have an hour long program tomorrow. Make sure that you stay tuned to Cowboy State Politics Live. You can listen and watch the live program every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. And definitely don't miss the Cowboy State Politics podcast. Yesterday was a doozy, my friend. So, from the base of the Tetons in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, I'm David Iverson, and this is